My dear friends, we have the first presentation by Father John Thekkekara, the Associate Director of St. John's Medical College Hospital, Bangalore. And Father John had been in this ministry for a number of years, and he has been trained extensively for this ministry. I'm sure that Father John's insights and interventions will certainly give us inspiration. More than the information, he would definitely inspire all of us to have a better spiritual perspective in this healing ministry. May I now call upon Father John to begin his presentation. Father John, please.
So good evening, and good evening to everyone present here. I know I'm talking to stalwarts in the field of Catholic healthcare, but still I'll try to present some of the views of the church. And I'm very delighted to be on this platform. And thanks to Father Saju. Actually, I pitch in as a substitute for Father Paul, who is finding it a little difficult to join us this evening. And thanks for the wonderful introduction by Father Julius, one of my close friends. I am asked to present healthcare as the mission of the church. Indeed, I'm very much delighted to get a topic like this because the nuances of the topic are quite interesting to me, and I feel it will be equally interesting to you as well. To begin with, I must say, I don't have to tell you about the healing ministry and the origin of healing ministry of the church. I'm not at all touching upon the Old Testament background. But I cannot but start by saying about Jesus himself, who is the supreme healer and who is the foundation on which the entire ministry of the church is built. Particularly the healing ministry, because he himself is the supreme healer. And if I have to say about that, maybe I have to reproduce the entire Gospels. Therefore, I'm not attempting to do that. But wants to say that it starts from there. And the apostles, as we go through the Acts of the Apostles, we see that almost all of them followed his example and healed many people. This part, of course, is known to all of us. And then, what happened after the apostles? There are early fathers of the church who were also continuing the healing ministry of the church, because they considered that healing ministry is so important. And of course, hospitals were the major platforms through which they were trying to reach out to the people and give service. One of the greatest saints among the early fathers, Saint Basil, himself established a hospital at Caesarea, and Gregory Nazianzen has beautifully written about that. So they themselves believed in offering healthcare as a continuation of the ministry of Jesus and his disciples. And we see the example of Saint Basil was replicated by many people, like Saint Chrysostom and Pulcheria, the sister of Theodosius too. And it was also done by Saint Jerome. Justinian established nearly 35 hospitals in the imperial capital. So most of the early fathers were quite aware about the need and the importance of the ministry of the church in healthcare, and were contributors in the early ages to establish hospitals and healthcare ministry. Many of the early fathers, so to say the priests and the bishops, were physicians. And we consider Cosmas and Damian, who were the patron saints of healthcare workers. They themselves are physicians who were martyred. And many of the popes were also physicians. I can give you the example of Pope Sylvester. In the 10th century, was famous for his medical knowledge. And we see further towards the beginning of the medieval ages, the Pope Innocent III was a big promoter of hospitals. So he bought from France an expert in making hospitals and tried to build a model hospital in Rome. It was the old Santo Spirito. And the Pope got the attention of the bishops who came for Ad limina visit and asked them to visit the hospital there and suggested that they should have such kind of hospitals established in their dioceses. And this was a big boom for establishment of hospitals in Europe and subsequently in all other parts of the world. So the church leadership was careful and seriously concerned about healthcare ministry as something which is very important, and encourage people to get into it and establish hospitals. Now, what should we say about healthcare ministry? Why the church leadership was so much concerned about that? Of course, the church believed in evangelization through healthcare ministry. The ultimate aim of the church is to preach the gospel and present the Lord to the world. And it considered healthcare ministry, healing ministry, as one of the most effective ways of preaching and evangelizing. I would like to quote the example of two great personalities who worked in the Indian context. One is Father Joseph Panyikaran, the founder of MSJ congregation, who observed and found that many of the people in Kerala were moving to Protestant churches and getting baptized there because of their preaching and healing ministry. Therefore, he wanted to establish a religious congregation for healthcare ministry as such, because he had so much of a conviction that healthcare is the best means of preaching and witnessing. At a point when people are really helpless, to reach out to them, to help them, and to be with them in their suffering was identified him as the strongest means of evangelization. Mother Anna Dengal also had the same conviction. Of course, she was one of the people who influenced so much the Holy See to give freedom for the sisters to get into medical practice. After getting that permission, she herself started the medical mission congregation, we all know. So her conviction compelled her to reach out to people of all races and all religions anywhere in the world and to minister to them so that they would realize the love of Jesus in the people who serve the poor and the needy. And we know that she started her work in Rawalpindi and then replicated the same in Dhaka and further in many other parts of the present India. And many of the hospitals in those times were established by her and her sisters. Now, she identified the most vulnerable people, especially the women and the children, and mostly the Muslim women who were not allowed to meet the men doctors. So the church considered that reaching out to those kind of marginalized and vulnerable people was a very important mission of the church. And that was a very witnessing presence in those unserved communities. So at this point, you may ask me a question whether evangelization aims at conversion. Of course, there is a lot of discussion on that. I'm not getting into the theology of missions, but just bring to your notice that it has an answer of yes and no. And the pre-Vatican concept of gaining baptism was there behind all sorts of evangelization activities. But from Vatican II, we see a twist in the approach of the church, which says that the church, by its duty, is bound to give witness to Christ. And it is the duty of each and every member of the church. So rather than gaining baptism or compelling people to change their former ways of life and getting into new Christian way of life, the church believes that we have to be witnessing. And by our witnessing, certainly they will come to know about the love of God and will accept Jesus, even though they may not get baptized. So that witnessing value is, which is being considered very important in the present context. And this is the reason why we are still continuing in healthcare. Now, there are so many other private and corporate organizations who are there in healthcare. And the government sector has gone far, far better than what it was. If you take the Indian context, most of the government hospitals have improved a lot in the quality of services, the cleanliness of the hospitals, and the technology adoption is very good there. Then why should we continue with all our difficulties in this mission? An answer could be traced from the teachings of the Bishops' Conference of the USA, which says that the church has always sought to embody our Savior's concern for the sick. The mystery of Christ casts light on every facet of Catholic healthcare. The mystery of Christ, the Christu Rahasyam, that is the core which touches all aspects of life according to the view of the church. Whether it be birth, whether it be suffering, whether it be death. So that final act of communion with Christ in death and resurrection, till then, we are trying to touch people because of the mystery of Christ. And this is the reason why the church gets into healthcare ministry, to preach and present and witness Christ at all stages of life to people who are undergoing that. I would like to quote Pope Francis here, who says that the time spent with the sick is the holy time. And most often the world forgets the special value of time spent at the bedside of the sick. And we forget to give ourselves freely. And that is considered by Pope as lukewarm faith. Now, most often, those who are in healthcare ministry will not be joining the community prayers, may not be able to make it even to the Mass sometimes, or many of other spiritual activities may be dropped. By the end of the day, they will be extremely exhausted, and they may feel bad that they have forgone many of those things. But here, Pope Francis says, if you have spent time with the sick, that is a holy time. That is a holy, that is a holy time. And this is what the church wants you to do. Because whatever you did to the poor, according to Jesus, is done to him. So you did it unto me. Therefore, we have nothing to regret, even if we fail to reach for a prayer, because we are engaged in sharing the mystery of Christ with others in the given context of their life. So that is an active faith life brought into practice. This was said by the Pope on the World Day of Sick in 2016. We often consider our ministry as charitable healthcare. By mistake, people have taken to believe that charitable healthcare means free care and they don't have to pay any bill. This is one of the major issues which happens in most of the mission hospitals, that people come with an understanding that it's a Christian mission hospital, therefore everything is free. And many of our fathers and sisters, or those who work in the hospitals, feel frustrated at some point because we are not able to give free care. It is not primarily free care that we mean by being charitable. So what is then charity? In its genuine sense, charity means pure love. God himself is love. Therefore, charity is the essence of God. It's creative, redemptive, transformative, and reconciling love of God. And if we are sharing with people that real, genuine love of God, that is charity. Therefore, the true love of God manifested in the work of the caregivers, associates, and leaders is what makes a hospital charitable hospital. My dear brothers and sisters, don't feel bad to say that ours is a charitable hospital, even when we are not able to give discounts on the bill. Rather than considering the monetary aspect of that, we are trying to give at most compassionate care with the pure love of God to the people who come to us. And that is the charity we do. Of course, in this commercialized healthcare context, we can never give free service. But for every single pie we collect from them, or much beyond that, we are trying to give true, genuine love to the people by being at their side always and serving them with utmost cordial love and compassion. And therefore, we live as charitable hospital in its genuine sense. This charity is what the church wanted the missionaries to do. Previously, the sisters were not allowed to get into medical practice. But still, even at that point, the church wanted them to be in the healthcare field, to be ambassadors of Christian love, especially to assist the sick, the poor, and the underprivileged. But then later, due to appeal from different people and rethinking of the church realized that there is a need to get into the medical practice. And that was rightly understood by Pope Pius XII, who considered healthcare as a powerful instrument in the extension of the kingdom of Christ. So I have to say that this was a means of evangelization with a genuine love being shared with people that made the church to rethink it. And finally, on 11th February, the feast of Our Lady of Lourdes, 1936, the church came out with a document from the Propaganda Fide stating that the sisters can get into medical practice, including surgery and obstetrics. So thereafter, we see a boom of congregations taking it up as their primary charism, and certain congregations getting established solely for the purpose of healthcare, because it is considered as a means of sharing the love of God and bearing witness to the kingdom of God. When these numbers got multiplied and we were given the freedom to get into healthcare by the church itself, where did we go? Where did we establish the healthcare facilities? The healthcare facilities or the healthcare ministry were started in places where the church wanted the ministry. I've gone through the history and the archives of many of the mission hospitals in India. There I have found clearly the reason behind the establishment of the hospital would have been a request by a bishop, or at least a Catholic community led by a priest or somebody who really appealed to the congregations to come and start a ministry there. So it was not an individual's desire, but mostly the need and request of the church, which made people to get into healthcare of the various pockets of our country, mostly at the request of the bishops, and always attached to a parish or a Catholic community. The Protestant brothers and sisters often ventured into very remote places and started their clinics. They were mostly individuals or couple doctors or couple missionaries, with either of them being a doctor, who started a clinic there and slowly attracted people, converted them, established churches and so on. Whereas the Catholics, on the other side, always started their hospital close to a church so that the sisters would be able to attend the mass and the spiritual services would be availed with the help of the priest there, and they would live close to the Catholic community. This is something interesting to see, that it was considered as the mission of the church to do it. So why should we continue here? One, I think professionals can be hired now. It's not difficult to get a doctor or a nurse or a paramedic in India now. There are so many training institutes, and if you offer a good sum, certainly people will accept and join you. But a missionary can never be hired. You pay anything, nobody can be made a missionary, because only vocation can make a missionary. Not even a training, I would say. Because training can modify a person to some extent, but never can it make a person real missionary. It's only vocation which makes a people, which make a person missionary. And the church always insisted that a missionary in healthcare should carry the nice combination of professionalism with gospel values. And the document from the Propaganda Fide clearly stated that all of those who get into healthcare should have certificates as doctors, nurses, or other eligible healthcare workers, which means the church did not want to push anybody because of its need to evangelize. No, it should be professional service given to the people with gospel value. Therefore, a professional is not being hired by the church, but a missionary who is also a professional is taken by the church to execute its mission of healing. So what are we then doing? Are we working as individuals or are we working as church? The American Catholic Health Association, somewhat like what CHAI we have in India, which began even before CHAI, the American Catholic Health Association, says that there are so many individuals who work, but they are not officially authorized by the church. Even our own brothers and sisters are running hospitals, healthcare centers, clinics, or other forms of healthcare ministry, but we don't consider them officially as part of the church ministry. Because to be part of the healthcare ministry of the church, the person and the organization should be officially authorized by the church. Most of the hospitals in their history has clearly written the hospital was blessed by a bishop or a priest. The ministry was begun by a provincial or a general who discussed the matter with the bishop, with the priest, and then organized things. That means it was officially authorized by the church. And therefore, we become part of an institution with a mandate to minister in the church name. So we work, although as individuals, we work as part of institutions with a mandate to minister in the name of the church. Even if a single religious individual working in a remote context could be considered or should be considered as part of this institution with the mandate to serve on behalf of the church. And this sponsorship, according to some of the Catholic experts in the field, makes the status of a juridic person to the one who is involved in this, to the organization which is involved in this. And it is the ministry of the church we are doing. But unfortunately, many of our services are exclusive of the laity. We don't actually consider them to be part and parcel of the healthcare team, unless there are some professionals working in some hospitals and so on. But the qualified people also could be made part of our ministry, because they also are companions in this ministry. So the limited expertise of the religious could be compensated by the expertise of the laity in all other different fields, who are our brothers and sisters. Lay participation and transparency in administration is very much required now, because people put their trust in our hospitals, but we don't trust them much. Unless we trust them and help them also to be part of the ministry, it will be very difficult for the mission to be sustainable. I would like to give the example from the US, where many of the congregations died out and they could not continue their hospitals or healthcare ministries. Therefore, the laity understood that this is a very noble mission of the church which has to be continued. And they formed organizations like the Ascension and so on, and took up the hospitals. And many of the religious congregations handed over to them to run the hospital. So they revived the hospitals, and they are now continuing the ministry, which many of the congregations cherished for a long time. And now they are unable to do because of less vocation. The sisters are not there, but the mission is continued beautifully through the hands of the laity. So I'm concluding with this example by saying that this is the ministry of the church. There is no doubt every individual who is in this ministry is part of the ministry of the church and is trying to give that charity of God, which is the supreme love, being shared at the bedside of the patient, whether in any situation of his suffering, being with him and sharing the love of God and giving a witnessing presence to him, which is a mandate given to the church. Therefore, more than sustainability of our institutions, we should look at the sustainability of the mission as the supreme concern. We are part and parcel of the church which has the mandate to continue this mission. Therefore, the mission of the church has to continue, and we are just contributors in this field. So, may I thank you for your patient listening, and I hope that the mission of the church will be regarded as much more important than our institutions. And we will realize that we are individuals who are actually part of the church and its mission, rather than serving in isolation. Thank you. God bless you.